All right, so here is analysis of the game of diplomacy I'm running on anmon. Right now, we just finished the spring 1902 turn, so we are in full of 1902, and I'm waiting for my players to send me their orders for full 1902. So to begin with, we have 7 players. Um, Now, out of all these 7 players, 2 of them are a little bit familiar with diplomacy and how it works. The Turkish player seems to be the one. Hold on. The Turkish player seems to be the one who's most familiar with the game. The England player might be a little bit familiar with the game. Everybody else um, essentially doesn't know how to play or didn't know how to play at the start of the game. The German player took time to go through the rules. So did the Austrian player. Um, the French player also a little bit. The Russian player and the Italian player, they are by far the most incompetent ones. The Italian player just seems to be a little bit disconnected from the game, although this is changing, and the Russian player is having a hard time understanding how the game works, despite me trying my best to make it easy for them. So for anybody who knows, I'm not an expert on diplomacy. I know a little bit. I've played before a couple of games. I've seen videos on diplomacy. I've read some some game analysis on diplomacy before. I know a little bit more than just the next guy who just bought the game and opened the box and just played for the first time. So for anybody who is accustomed to diplomacy, they would know that France is known to be the easiest pick, whereas Austria-Hungary is the hardest, or at least the hardest with Italy. Those two are definitely the most difficult nations to play. Um, so yeah, Russia, Turkey, England, fairly simple nations to play. Germany may be a little bit more tricky, in my opinion, but yeah. So, what do we have here? Uh, from my understanding, the French player and the England player, as of now, have the strongest alliance and the strongest level of mutual trust. Um, Looking at the full 1901 map, we can see that the French player moved their Brest fleet to the mid Atlantic, and the English player moved their London fleet to the North Sea. So the English Channel is completely demilitarized. This immediately spells doom for the rest of the map and for the rest of the players, uh, unless they do something about it. Because again, France being the easiest start three with three supply centers easily available to them, uh, or at least two, like Portugal and Spain. Nobody can really um, challenge them on Spain. Nobody can really challenge them on Portugal. Belgium, if the German player, moves into Holland and then predicts a a French expansion into Belgium, uh, France and Germany can end up bouncing each other in Belgium, while the German player, you know, stays in Holland, so gets it by the end of fall anyway. But the French player played beautifully, um, earned complete trust from the English player, so he doesn't have to worry about, controlling the English channel or bouncing an English fleet from going into the English channel, and also earned the German players' trust. They agreed to split the, the Benelux, so they agreed to have France get Belgium and Germany get Holland. So on that front too, absolutely no issues for France. The only front that France might have issues on is the Italian front. But the Italian player, I mean, they moved their Naples fleet to the Tyrrhenian Sea, and I know that in the next round they plan to move it to Tunis, which is a perfectly reasonable move. Absolutely nothing wrong with that. The Italian player also moved their Rome army to Tuscany, and Venice is holding. So, I mean, um, nothing extravagant, but yeah. So Marseille and Piedmont, the, the area of tension right now. There's no troops on either. So right now the French player doesn't need to worry about Italy. So France doesn't need to worry about England, doesn't need to worry about Germany, doesn't need to worry about Italy. France has free reign to do whatever he wants, and he will get Portugal, Spain, and Belgium by the end of fall, and so he will get 3 new units. Uh, Granted, he has left his 3 home supply centers free to build on. In the meantime, as anybody who knows a bit about diplomacy knows, one of the strongest alliances, if not the strongest alliance, is the Russia-Turkey alliance. Now, in this game, Russia and Turkey are not really strong allies. Their orders are definitely mistrustful of one another. So the Turkish player has moved his Ankara fleet to the Black Sea. So the Russian and Turkish players did not manage to get a demilitarized agreement like the French and English players did. Um, and somehow, either the Turkish player convinced the Russian player to just let him have the Black Sea, or they did agree to a demilitarized zone, but then the Turkish player backstabbed him and took the Black Sea anyway, or maybe there was some ambiguity about it. Either way, Turkey owns the Black Sea, which is a major security issue for Russia if Turkey ever decides to backstab Russia and use the Black Sea fleet to, take Romania, take Sevastopol, right? In the meantime, the Russian player has moved his St. Petersburg fleet to the Gulf of Bothnia, planning to move into Sweden. Perfectly reasonable move, textbook move. He has also moved his Sevastopol fleet into Romania. Again, I mean, kind of weird, but in the end, if he can trust the Turkish player not to attack him, then it would make sense to take Romania with the Sevastopol fleet. And I believe he moved his Moscow army to Ukraine and just used the Warsaw army to hold in spring. So effectively, he moved 3 units out of the 4 he had. Now, Austro-Hungary unfortunately, it's a nation that in the game of diplomacy needs really strong diplomacy. Um, but from my understanding, seeing the, the orders and the gossip I've been fed as game master, Austria just seems to really have no strong ties to anybody and seems to have, mild agreements with everybody. So just not not a good strategy. Not a good strategy. As Austria, you really need to understand who you can trust and who you cannot trust, who you're going to work with. And again, anybody who knows a little bit about diplomacy strategy knows that both Germany and Austria have enough enemies to worry about, and they don't really gain anything from antagonizing each other. So Germany and Austria are natural allies in diplomacy, or at the very least, uh, they are natural non-aggression pact uh, agreeers. Um, not so much in this game. Not so much in this game. So Austria used the fleet in Trieste to hold. Weird a little bit. It's a bit weird that both Italy and Austria are just holding their respective positions in Venice and Trieste and not trying to circumvent, like going to the Adriatic or trying to go through Tyrolia, just holding. Vienna is also holding. Um, he has moved his Budapest army to Serbia, which grants him a new supply center if uncontested. Uh, Leaves Budapest open. Uh, I mean, again, Austria-Hungary has a difficult position all over, so it's hard to say how good or how bad of a move this is from my point of view as a novice diplomacy player. Um, I think I would have liked to see the Vienna army do something, either moving to Tyrolia in order to put pressure into Italy, or moving to Galicia or Budapest to be able to support the Serbian army or put pressure on Russia. Um, very, very passive turn, in my opinion. England, as I said, England has free reign to do whatever he wants because the French player is not contesting them at all. So he moved the Edinburgh fleet to the Norwegian Sea and the London fleet to the North Sea. He is poised to take over Scandinavia. He is poised to pressure Germany. He is pressuring Germany. Germany moved the Kiel fleet to Holland, fair enough, and moved the Berlin army to Kiel. So that to me suggests, direct opposition to England, because with the army to Kiel, you are either going to try and defend Holland, which puts you at odds with England and France, or moving it to Denmark, which puts you at odds with England, no questions asked. The army in Munich uh, has been ordered to just hold, um, which makes sense insofar as you can trust the French player. Now, unfortunately, in this game, the German player did trust the French player, while the French player was planning to betray him from the very start. So, unfortunately, Army Munich holds. Not the best move here, especially because it also kind of it puts pressure on Austria, which you don't really want to do. Again, I said it before. Um, you don't need to put pressure on Austria. Austria has enough on its plate. Um, I would have, and Austria has no really Austria has no benefit in pressuring you, has no benefit in moving an army to Bohemia. Austria has too much going on. So I would have preferred probably seeing the Munich army either going to Ruhr and, like a complete westward focus, um, to defend from a potential French attack, to defend Holland, to have all your armies close together so they can, cooperate, or Army Munich either to Berlin or Silesia in order to pressure Russia or have a northward focus into Scandinavia. What are we left with? I've talked about Russia, I've talked about Austria, I've talked about Italy, France. Yeah, it's just Turkey. Turkey moved as I said, the Ankara fleet to the Black Sea, putting pressure on Russia. Would be better if they could, trust each other, but they do not really. I think the Turkish player would be willing to trust the Russian player, but the Russian player has a very distrustful nature and is very hard to work with because of that. So yeah, Turkey moved the Constantinople army to Bulgaria, getting a supply center, fair enough, and he moved the Smyrna army to Constantinople. I mean, those are all perfectly reasonable moves. So the orders for Fall 91 instead, let me see if I can find them. Can I jump to the message? Can I not jump to message? This is a bit stupid, isn't it? That I viewing timeline? There we go. No. Where's the orders? Where's the orders? Hold on. Here's the orders. All right. So in fall 1901, predictably, French player holds Spain, moves the fleet from mid-Atlantic to Portugal, and moves army from Burgundy to Belgium. This is the best possible opening for France. He has gained everything he could have gained. Nobody's contesting him. He's having a hell of a time. Italy. That's funny because Italy gave me a set of orders originally before the deadline, and then changed them dramatically. So initially, Italy. Oh no, hold on. This is the 419-1. So no, never mind what I just said. Very simply, Italy moves the fleet from the Tyrrhenian Sea to Tunis, reasonable, and then he moves the army from Tuscany to Piedmont. So that symbolizes a pressure towards France, but also possibly helping in the future the Venice army go into Tyrolia if you wanted to. Venice army just holds, just keeps holding, do nothing, just hold. Could at least try. I mean, if you don't want to alarm the Austrian player too much, then just holding also makes sense. The Turkish player here is where you really see the mistrust between the Russian player and the Turkish player. So the Turkish player moves the army from Bulgaria to Greece. Fair enough. Nobody even tries to contest that. The Austrian player could have tried to contest that, move the army from Serbia to Greece, have them bounce. Of course, it's a bold and aggressive move, and you don't necessarily want that. And here is the mistrust. Here's the mistrust, right? Because at the same time, the Turkish player moves from Constantinople to Bulgaria, and he feels the need to support that move with a fleet from the Black Sea. Now, you could say, well, I have a fleet in the Black Sea, might as well support it. I have nothing better to do but than to support my Constantinople army moving into Bulgaria, which is fair enough, fair enough. But at the same time, the Russian player is moving the Warsaw unit to Ukraine and the Ukraine unit to Sevastopol. So we see this massive shift of focus southeast. So, I mean, this to me signals either very mistrustful of Turkey, very or a lot of trust for Germany because you're moving your troops all the way away from Germany. Um, or this could also be seen as just repositioning your troops for you know for full Balkan focus. Also fair, but again, the army moving to Ukraine is being supported by the fleet in Romania. Like the fact that the Russian player felt the need to support Ukraine into Sevastopol. How would you not? How would you possibly not have succeeded? The only way you would not have succeeded in moving your army from Ukraine to Sevastopol is if the the Black Sea fleet tried to enter Sevastopol. Then you would have bounced. But so that means to me that you don't know that the fleet in the Black Sea is not trying to move into Sevastopol. So again, just mistrust. Like you cannot trust the Turkish player not to interfere in Sevastopol. Um, Now the Austrian player is holding Serbia. All right, all right. Um, and he's moving the army from Vienna to Tyrolia, so that's a focus towards either Germany or Italy or both, and holding Trieste. Again, just holding. Well, whatever. Um, we've talked about, oh yeah, Russia. One last move from Russia. I mean, this is a very obvious move. He moves the fleet from the Gulf of Bothnia into Sweden. I mean, what else were you gonna do? Uh, and now we reach the the really the first big tensions rising up or erupting even. So Germany holds Holland, fair enough, and both the German army in Kiel and the English fleet in the North Sea try to go into Denmark. They bounce each other. Nobody gets Denmark. So clearly, Germany and England are not communicating. They're clearly not working together. They might be even just straight up working against one another. And Germany moves the Munich army to Berlin. This signals a lot of trust in France, a lot of trust in France. Also signals maybe a lack of interest in Austria. It certainly signals an interest in Scandinavia, or at least Holland, Denmark, and it might signal a move towards Russia in the future. Yeah, so that's it. And England, they hold York. What are you gonna do? What the fuck are you gonna do? You're trying to use your North Sea fleet to take Denmark, so you can't really use it to convoy. And he moves the fleet from the Norwegian Sea to Norway. So England gets Norway, Russia gets Sweden. They are now directly bordering each other. They might be at odds with one another. So that was fall 1901. After that, new units are built. France jumps to 6 units. Russia also jumps to 6 units. So France and Russia are having the best of times. Uh, France gets a fleet in Portugal, an army in Spain, an army in Belgium. England gets um, what do they get? What do they get? Hold on. 1, 2, 3, 4. 1, 2, 3. I might have just forgotten to put it in the picture. Hmm. Maybe there was just yeah, there was a temporary map. Let me use this map as a reference because it's a complete map. So yeah, France, as I said, so France gets control of Portugal, Spain, and Belgium. England gets control of Norway and builds a new army in London. Germany gets control of Holland and builds a new army in Munich. So the previous move from Munich to Berlin was uh, most likely just so that they could free up Munich and build a unit there. All right. Italy gets control of Tunis and builds a new army in Rome. Austro-Hungary gets control of Serbia and builds a new army in Vienna. Turkey gets control of both Bulgaria and Greece. Very strong opening from Turkey here. And they build a new fleet in Smyrna. I'm liking the Turkish game here, if not for the lack of cooperation with Russia. And Russia gets Sweden, gets Romania, and gets 2 new armies, one in Warsaw, one in Moscow. So the orders for spring 1902. This is where things really start to, go to get chaotic. Here is the betrayal. Here is the betrayal. So England uses the North Sea fleet to convoy York into Holland, and France supports the York move into Holland with its army in Belgium. So that's, that dislodges Germany from Holland and really, reveals how strong the Anglo-French alliance is. The English Channel is still completely demilitarized. France moves the fleet from Brest to mid-Atlantic. Might just be making space for new units in Brest. I mean, they have a demilitarized zone in the English Channel, so where else are you going to move your Brest fleet? I mean, you could move it to Picardy, you could move it to Gascony, chooses to move to mid-Atlantic. All right, fair enough. And the Portuguese and Spanish troops move east. Portugal moves to Spain, Spain moves to Marseille, and the fleet in Marseille moves to the Gulf of Lyon. This is most likely the beginning of a huge offensive against Italy. And here is where actually I was referring back. Italy changed their original orders. So originally, Italy was going to move his Tunis fleet into the West Mediterranean, and he was going to move his Piedmont army into Marseille, right? And his army in Rome to Tuscany, which meant, full focus on France, which I was happy to see. Finally, someone pushing back against France. And funnily enough, this would have meant that the fleet in Marseille would have moved to the Gulf of Lyon. The Spanish and Italian, the French army in Spain and the Italian army in Piedmont would have bounced. Marseille would have been left wide open, and the Spanish army would have remained in Spain, and the Portuguese fleet would have remained in Portugal. This would have been a significant setback for French player. Now, unfortunately, for my own enjoyment of the game, uh, Italy did not proceed with their anti-French plan, and they seem to have instead coordinated, of all people, with Germany against Austria. Right, so the final orders for Italy were to move their fleet from Tunis into the Ionian Sea. Um, so possibly, possibly priming for antagonizing Turkey, or just priming to then go to the Adriatic and hit Austria from there as well, or maybe going to Albania first. Um, the Venice army finally makes a move, moves into Tyrolia with support from Piedmont, and the army in Rome is set to move into Venice as the Venice unit moves away. Um, and that is successful. That the move is successful. The army in Venice successfully moves into Tyrolia. The Austrian unit in Tyrolia is not dislodged because they had ordered the Tyrolia unit to move into Trieste and to free up Trieste by moving the fleet in Trieste into the Adriatic Sea. This is very strategically sound, very smart moves from Austria, foreseeing this huge attack and preventing a possible forced disband of the Tyrol unit, especially considering the fact that Germany really goes all out on Austria, moving the Munich army into Bohemia and the Berlin army into Munich. Their plan, of course, was to box the Tyrol army and force it to be disbanded with the Venice attack. Um, and Austria, continuing on Austria, Austria seems to really be on the retreat a lot. In fact, they are moving the Serbia army into Budapest. Well, no, they're not really on the retreat that much. They did try to move Vienna into Galicia, but that move was stopped because Russia also all out on Austria-Hungary, unfortunately for Austria, moves Warsaw into Galicia with support from Ukraine, and then does a little, almost a triangulation with Army Sevastopol into Moscow and Army Moscow into Warsaw. So Russia is leaving Sevastopol open, right? And holding Romania. So we're gonna see if Turkey does something about that. In the meantime, what Turkey is doing, well, they are moving Army Bulgaria into Serbia with support from Greece. That was a very telegraphed move. And they're also moving Constantinople into Bulgaria with support from the Black Sea Fleet. Again, not the greatest show of trust on Russia, feeling the need to support the move from the Black Sea, but also, again, what are you going to do with the Black Sea if not supporting? So we've talked about that. Yeah, one last thing about France that I didn't mention. They are moving the Paris army into Burgundy, which, especially given the most recent developments, clear preparation for an attack against Germany. Now, interestingly, England and Russia, they both try to go into the Skagerrak Sea from Norway and Sweden respectively, and they bounce. This was a masterful prediction from the German player and masterful coordination with Russia. I love this move. I love this move. It it directly challenges England, who has been doing whatever the fuck they wanted to do so far. And with those two armies bouncing each other, the Kiel army is free to move into Denmark. Uh, Unfortunately, Germany is just blindly trusting France and going all out on Austria, which doesn't benefit them in the least. Um, and what England is doing, well, yeah, I did talk about this move. I did talk about this move. The German fleet in Holland, is forced to dislodge, and they are dislodged to the Helgoland bight. Not sure, not sure I like this move. The Helgoland bight to me seems a bit of a dead end. You can support Denmark, but you could have supported Denmark from Kiel as well. I don't I don't know. I'm not convinced of this move being the soundest choice. But yeah, these are the moves so far. It seems that Russia and Germany are working together for the time being. Turkey believes that Russia is at least neutral to friendly with them, and he expects Russia to first destroy Austria-Hungary with them and then go after Germany, which seems unlikely because they are working together with Germany so much, Russia that is. Seems more likely to me that Russia will now uh, probably work on two fronts, uh, mostly trying to make gains in the Balkans while giving soft support to Germany against England in Scandinavia or in the north in general. Italy and Germany are basically officially allied, which is seen in them working together against Austria. With the French, with the French attacking Germany and mounting an attack against Italy, I would like to see Germany and Italy, realizing the danger, reconsidering leaving Austria alone, and focus more on France and England. I'm not sure. I'm not sure we're gonna see that. But if they don't, I mean, if they don't, their other plan, their plan B, plan A, maybe from their perspective, is to quickly take out Austria and take as much as they can, make gains as quickly as they can, so that they can consolidate the Balkans and then push back against France and England. Not sure that's a sound strategy either. I mean, Turkey is making gains against Austria as well, and once Austria is out, well, who is Turkey primed to attack? Italy, right? Like, Italy really benefits from Austria being there as a buffer between them and Turkey, and therefore being able to just focus on France. But I don't think they see it that way. This is just my opinion, my analysis. So what I can foresee is I expect France and England to continue working together effectively against Germany and Italy. I foresee Italy and Germany foolishly continue focusing on Austria-Hungary. For the time being, I think Russia is gonna continue to work with Germany and at least leaving Turkey alone. And I see Italy, Germany, and Turkey continue to bash Austria-Hungary, and Austria-Hungary hasn't really demonstrated the strongest diplomatic game so far, so I don't expect them to be able to come back from this. I expect them to die a slow, painful death. All right.